Good morning, good morning. How you all doing? Karibuni sana. It's about 5 or so minutes past the hour. So you're just in time for today's session of the Forex Daily Analysis. Karibuni sana from wherever it is that you're joining us from. Good to see lots of people here streaming in. I see Blessing Warogoro there. I see Esther Mudoni Ngoshi. I see Samuel Favor Wawero there. I see Alice Munyenze, Caroline Chege, Caroline Mohia, Claire, and so many other people here, as well as so many people also joining us on our social media platforms. Karibuni sana. Like I always say, I know you're busy people, but you always take the time to join us for this session, and we're much appreciative of that. And we do hope that you're achieving whatever it is that you want to achieve out of your trading. So John Bogo is my name for the sake of guys who are joining us for the first time. If you've never seen me, never seen us, I'm a trader with Afriforex. Afriforex is a trading unit. It's not a one-man show. So we also do have Mitch. He is working in the back office. So in case you do have any questions, feel free to ask them both on the Q&A section and also on the chat box. Mitch will be getting back to you. But I will also be looking at the questions in the Q&A section, but towards the very end of this session. But remember, as always, you don't really need to wait until the very end. You still can ask your questions even as the webinar does end up progressing on. So I'm going to jump straight into it. So you can see the watch list right there. And it's more or less almost copy paste. I know yesterday there was a bit of a shift on the euro and the Great British Pound during the US session, but things seem to be back as they were yesterday morning. The fundamentals did come out, but of course there are other things and other fundamentals that came out, other factors that did end up affecting our decision. So we've put things back just like they were, but we will be doing a recap of what happened yesterday, as well as look at what we do end up expecting as we continue moving along. So I guess we can end up starting off by looking at a couple of screenshots that we did get. So we'll start off with this one. This one is from Bravin. So Bravin, if you're here, shout out to you. So this is on silver. So you can see that you got a good buying opportunity on this one. Market went up, stop loss already somewhere within your point of entry, which is good. Don't know where you are targeting, but it's good to see that you did some good money management. And of course on entry, that's a really good job. And keep up the good work. So Bravin, I know you love trading silver, so it's not a surprise to see that you're still on it. So shout out to you, Bravin, and of course keep up the good work. So we also did get a screenshot from Mark Ngori. So this is on the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar. So you can see you got some two good selling opportunities, one at the top, which was really good. Another one somewhere within this region right here. And I can see that your stop losses for both trades down within this region. Hopefully you did manage somewhere within here. You can see that the sellers came down aggressively within this region. The market bounced to the upside, and you can see that the market is back in within some sort of a buyer's region. But not too worried about that. I know that you're live on the charts, so you definitely know what you're doing. So shout out to Bravin and Mark Ingori. We got 2 screenshots yesterday. So shout out to both of you. And of course, like we always keep on telling guys, feel free to send in your screenshots, whether your trades are good or bad. That's the reason why we are here. Just make sure that you do use us as some sort of resource. And we're also happy to see you guys winning on the charts. We're not asking anyone for any money. Based on the setup that we give you, the money is yours. All we're asking is you can send us the screenshots, just to celebrate your wins with you. So feel free to send them in to us. Our contact details should be there on the chat box. You can send them in to us via WhatsApp. I know some of you are asking about Telegram. We're also working on it, so we've not forgotten. So I know there was a request about having the setups being, sent on Telegram. So we're also working on that, so we've not forgotten. So feel free to send them in to us. We'd be more than happy to see what you guys are up to on the charts. So I guess we can end up shifting gears into matters today. So you can see today, Thursday, the 25th of July, this is what the watch list is going to be looking like, more or less similar to what we had yesterday. You can also see gold is back to the sell side. I know yesterday it was to the buy side for a bit, but we will be having a look at that to see what transpired on that front. So we'll start off with the Swiss franc pairs, and we'll mix and match them up with everything on the sell side, move on to the USDs, the euro, then finally we will finish off with the yen pairs, and then switch over to the indices and the commodities. So for the New Zealand dollar against the Swiss franc, for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. And you can see the three regions right there that I had pointed out. In the morning, when we're looking at the charts, the market was somewhere within here. So you can see that at around 9:10, the market had just pulled back in within this region. And you can see that the market really struggled, within this area to push to the upside. The market came down. You can see some sort of a sign of the big boy coming in. Of course, if you read this story on a smaller time frame, maybe could have possibly gotten some selling opportunities. But you can see that the market has really been coming down, all through the week. If you get any trades on the New Zealand dollar or the Australian dollar, just make sure that you hang on to them. Also the yens as well. They've been showing a lot of course, weakness on the part of the New Zealand dollar and the Australian dollar, and a lot of strength on the yen pairs. So if you get any of them, just make sure that you possibly do end up hanging on, but just make sure that you do some proper money management. So you can see that off this area, the market has been coming down all through the US session and of course into the Asian session, which is what we're on right now. So for today, we're still going to be looking for selling opportunities. So let's see if we can get the market pulling back in, within these three areas right here. I know it's a bit of a long shot, especially based on the situation on the charts. They're not really giving much of pullbacks, but of course, we'll just be waiting to see what happens. But also watch out for minor SNRs, considering the fact that it's giving some shallow pullbacks. You could find that the pullback might just come in within this region. Just make sure that you read in as much as these areas are visible on the bigger time frame. But ideally, even on the smaller time frame, the small SNRs, like somewhere within there, or maybe even somewhere within this region here, you could possibly find that the market could come back in within that region. And after that, you could find that maybe the selling opportunities could possibly end up happening off there. So just make sure that you watch out for that. But ideally, in terms of looking for the sells now, there's a major area here that the market has come down until. So just make sure that you don't really end up looking for the sells now. Up until maybe if the market breaks to the downside of that region, then possibly we could find some good selling opportunities. Maybe something similar to this. But you can also see in terms of the pullbacks coming in, you can see like even when the market broke this region to the downside, the pullback came in within there. And also when the market broke this region right here, you can see that broke to the downside held. So that's the reason why I'm saying you could find the pullbacks coming in shallow. But of course, even if the deep pullbacks do end up coming in and the big boys, decide that they want to possibly stop out so many people who are jumping in on the sells now as they look for better prices, then at least you will also be ready for that. So moving on into the next one. This is the Great British Pound against the Swiss franc. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. And you can see the three regions right there that I had pointed out. Although this one had momentarily fallen off our watch list yesterday for a bit after the GBP news event came out, but it's like the big boys just didn't really quite show up, like would have expected based on what the fundamentals were telling us yesterday. So this one we're back at it in terms of sales, but before we end up looking at what we're going to be looking out for today, you can see that yesterday when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within here, so at around 910. Came to the downside, consider the market broke to the downside, pulled back in quite fast, back within this region right here. Unless you're reading that on a smaller time frame. On the 15-minute, could have been a bit hard in terms of grabbing that, but you can see that the market continued to move to the downside, like would have possibly expected. And you can see that during the Asian session, just like we've seen on the other Swiss franc pair, you can see a lot of strength coming in for the Swiss franc. So for this one, we will also be watching out for selling opportunities. But just make sure that you do watch out for these three areas right here. In terms of looking for the sells right now, it's possibly better to wait and see if you could get some sort of a pullback. Maybe back within this region here. There's a minor SNR as well somewhere within here because, the Swiss franc pairs are showing a lot of strength. So you might find that maybe the pullbacks might not really come in deep. But even if they do, at least you will be ready for these two areas right here. But just monitor what happens even on the minor SNRs. But let's wait and see if we can get the market breaking to the downside of this region. If it does, then hopefully on the pullback, you could possibly end up grabbing that trade right there. So moving on into the next one. This is the Australian dollar against the Swiss franc. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. You can see the three regions right here that I had pointed out in terms of the areas to look out for the sells. Then you can see that in the morning when you're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within here. We wanted to see the market break to the downside. And you can see that there was a minor hold. Unless you are really reading this on the smaller time frame, you can see that after that, maybe even if you did attempt sells here, put stops here, maybe you can see that that trade did actually end up working out, even going way past, the areas that you would have possibly thought. So it seems like the big boys are really into the Swiss franc pairs. We were having a chat with the team in the morning when we we're doing the analysis, and there's a possibility the market could be fear-based, because when the market is fear-based, you find that a lot of people actually put their money in the Swiss franc, as some sort of a safe haven. So this showing a lot of strength, the Australian dollar showing a lot of weakness in the New Zealand dollar. Those are signs of, a fear-based market. And also the yens, demonstrating a lot of strength. Those are, symptoms possibly tell us that maybe there could be something. There's possibly something that the big boys do know that we don't. But ideally, just looking at the charts, there's possibly something that they are fearing. There's something that they possibly foresee based on how the markets are behaving and based on the currency pairs that are showing strength and weakness in line with what normally happens in a fear-based market. So for this one, we're still going to be trying to see whether we can get sell. Similar situation with the rest of the CHFs that we've looked at. So wait and see if you could get a breach to the downside of this region. You could possibly find that maybe at 10 during the London market open, maybe the market could move to the downside, but also possibly just give it the benefit of doubt. If the buyers do actually decide to come in, then you could find that the market could come back in within here. And of course, there's a bit of a long shot somewhere within that area there, but you also could find minus and Rs within here. The only tricky thing about getting the trades, especially somewhere within these levels right here, is that you also need to get a perfect balance between getting a proper trade or just getting a trade and the risk to reward also making sense. Because also remember that you're so close within this region right here. And that's the reason why it would be better for price to possibly come up, somewhere as close as possible within here. Because if you get the trade somewhere within here, then that means that you possibly have to go down to the 1 minute time frame so that the stop losses end up being as tight as possible so that it makes sense. Because remember, the problem area within here is not moving. That one is it's static. It's right there. So you can't ignore that. So make sure that you watch out for that. But of course, if the market breaks to the downside and seems like it wants to continue to the downside, also have a look at the rest of the Swiss franc pairs, just to make sure that it's possibly something to do with the CHFs or maybe with the AUDs. And ideally, that will help you in terms of making your decisions on whether or not to jump in on the trade or not. So last but not least, we do have the Canadian dollar against the Swiss franc. The Swiss franc pairs rather. So for this one, yesterday we were also trying to see whether we could get sells. You can't see the three regions that I had pointed out. The pullbacks are just not coming in, just like we've seen on the rest of the Swiss franc pairs. And you can see that the market broke this region to the downside after a small hold. The pullback couldn't come in within that region clearly. And the Swiss franc pairs, I think, are a bit tricky. Unless you're possibly reading the pullbacks on the smaller time frames, the 15-minute pullbacks are just not coming through. Like the market is just really moving, but even if it's moving in a very slow pace, but it's still moving to the downside. So the pullbacks are just not coming in. But if you do get a proper pullback, just make sure that you do justice to it. So for this one, we're going to be watching out for these three areas. Similar situation, you can't see the correlation across the board. So it's like we've analyzed the same chart over and over again 4 times. So even the story for this one, more or less the same as what we've discussed on the others. So that's pretty much it in terms of the Swiss franc pairs. So we'll mix and match up now the USD pairs with everything on the sell side, the currency pairs. So we'll start off with the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar. So for this one, yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. You can see the 3 regions right there that I had pointed out. In the morning when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within here. So you can see that at around 9:10, wanted price to come in somewhere as close as possible within there. You can see that the market tapped there, but there was a small blip of the sellers. It's not really what we wanted to see, based on how the market had moved down. So there was no big boy involved in that. And you can see that the market went to the upside. It seemed like it held within this region right here. Then you can see that the big boys actually showed up with this move coming down. But you can't see that the market pulled back in within this region. But unfortunately, when that happened, I don't think any of us were on the charts at that point in time, but could have been a good entry there. But remember, we always say don't chase. So just because you missed that opportunity, maybe even if you are eyeing it from yesterday and it didn't work out, or you didn't actually end up being able to hope on it, at least today is another day. So there'll definitely be more trading opportunities. So right now the market is down here. So what we'll be waiting for is to see what happens within this region here. This is a buyer's area. I mean, if you want to jump in on selling opportunities within here, right now, considering the fact that the market looks like it went to the upside, came back in and seems to be holding. I mean, if you get sales somewhere within here, you could possibly end up having your stops within this region right here. So let's say, for example, if the market were to come back in somewhere within here, then you can see that even if you have your stops there, we're only looking at 9 pips, which is not so much. But of course, now the thing that you need to factor in before you jump in on the trade is, where are you heading? It's always important to know where you're heading before you actually take a trade, because if there is no room to the downside, then you're bound to end up getting into issues. So for this one, it's not too bad, because it seems like since the market is coming down, we could find it literally come back in all the way to within this region. So that means that we do have some room to the downside, all the way down to within there. So if we go back to the 15-minute time frame, just to see if that setup actually makes financial sense. We're looking at a 1:3.64, which is not too bad. Although the only problem about this one is, if you look at how the sellers are coming in, there's no sign of any big sellers, just yet in the market. And that's the only thing that would possibly end up giving an issue. So if you end up jumping in on this trade, this is an aggressive entry. Maybe if we're possibly end up waiting for the market to end up showing, the buyers really struggling, then we see a sign of the big sellers showing up, something such as this, then possibly on the pullback, if you end up taking that trade, I think that trade has a bit more confirmation, and you possibly end up finding that the market would possibly come in here quite fast. So this one is a bit aggressive, but ideally, if you do wait, maybe for the sellers to really show up, because this is not really them. In as much as the market is holding within here, we can't quite say that that is them, but ideally, at least the good thing is there is range to the downside. If the market breaks and holds above here, then that means that there's a possibility price could be coming back in within here or somewhere within that region there. So just make sure that you're on the lookout. But like we always say, sometimes, taking the risk, sometimes it does end up paying off. And remember, it's all calculated risks. That's what we always tell guys to make sure that they're doing on the charts. This is not spot pesa. You're not here to possibly end up gambling. You're looking at what could possibly end up going wrong, and you've already factored that in, so that in case things go south, at least your risk is in check. So just make sure that you watch out for that. And of course, if you do end up attempting that, if you get stopped out, then just make sure you wait for the market to reset itself. If you could possibly end up getting another opportunity to jump back in, and you can definitely end up recovering. So moving on into the next one. This is the Great British Pound against the US dollar. So for this one yesterday, we were trying to see whether we could have gotten some sells. Although this one had momentarily fallen off our watch list during the US session, but ideally in the morning, these are the 3 areas we're watching out for. And when we're looking at the charts in the morning at around 9, 10, you can see that price was back in within here. We talked about possibly looking for sells, I think somewhere within this area right here. You can see that the market came down quite fast during the US session. Then after the GBP news events came out, you can see that the market really pushed to the upside. And this one had fallen off our watch list, but you can see that the big boys did actually end up coming back into the downside, pushing the market lower. And ideally, the levels are more or less the same as what we had yesterday. So for this one, levels are the same. Let's see if we can get the market back in somewhere within here. Seems like the market has done a full cycle, because yesterday in the morning, price was still somewhere within this region. So it's done a full cycle and it's still back within the same region. But let's see if we can get the market back in within here, or somewhere as close as possible within there, so that when the market comes down and you end up getting an issue somewhere within this region, at least you can end up managing your trade at that point in time, even if you will be targeting down here. But also watch out for this region. There's a possibility price could come up back in within this region. For the guys who've done the one-on-one, I'm sure just looking at that, you can definitely see the reason why the market would be coming back in within that particular region there. So the next one is the Australian dollar against the US dollar. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. And you can see the 3 areas right there that I had pointed out. So aggressive, conservative, semi-aggressive, conservative here. And just going back to a time like this yesterday, so you can see that the market was here. Wanted to see the market tap within here. And of course, you can see that there was no big seller within there. And of course, with this illustration that I had, where we wanted to see the market possibly attempt to break to the upside, come back in before coming to the downside. And you can see that the market really held within here. Then during the US session, the market actually came to the downside. So what we have here is also a trade. I ended up taking this trade coming down. Also a trade that I'm still holding on to even right now. Let me see if I can get that screenshot out. So still coming down. Still a trade that I'm hanging on. So this one was early in the morning at around 7 in the morning, waking up to it. So the trade was right there coming down. Stop loss is still quite high. But based on what we're seeing on the AUDs, I'll possibly try and milk this one to the very end. So still going to be hanging on, and of course trying to see if we can get some pullbacks coming in to possibly try and see whether we could jump in on other selling opportunities. So do watch out for these three areas right here. So in case the market pulls back in within there, definitely an area where you could look for an entry, but also make sure that you do manage your trades, as the market continues to move to the downside. So right now we're waiting to see what happens within here. Based on how the sellers are coming in, let's see what the buyers have to say within here. If the market breaks to the downside, then you could find some more conservative selling opportunities within here to continue moving down. The AUDs are showing a lot of weakness, so you could possibly find that the market could continue to rally south. But let's just wait and see what happens. Also, areas that I'm watching out for are these regions right here. There's that area right there and also somewhere within here. I mean, if the market just comes shy of that region at the top, you could find that maybe somewhere within this region here, you could find some good entries to come down, could manage within there. Possibly the market breaks to the downside. For the guys who know how to scale in, you could possibly end up scaling in, as the market continues to move down lower and lower, but making sure that you're managing, as the market continues to move down south. So that's pretty much it for this one. Remember the red SNR at the top. If the market does end up going all the way to that region at the top, then just make sure that you possibly watch out for sales. But if the market breaks above that, then ideally in terms of looking for sales, just make sure that you really wait and see if the market can come back in the downside of that region. So the next one and the last USD is the US dollar against the Canadian dollar. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buys, and you can see the three regions right there that I had pointed out: aggressive, conservative, semi-aggressive, conservative here. And in the morning, when we're looking at the charts, the market was somewhere within this region right here, and we're expecting price to come back in within here. Indeed, you can see that during the US session, the market really took off to the upside from within this particular region, going up, and you can see that today the market has continued to move up high. The reason why you can see that there was this quick move is because there were some interest rate decisions that came out for the Canadian dollar. I think it was at around 4:45 our time PM, and you can see that the market just rallied up high coming up. So this was also a trade that I did end up taking. Unfortunately for me, on this one, I just got stopped out just before the market moved. You can see that the market just pulled back in, and immediately after that went all the way to the area I was targeting. Unfortunately, I didn't get another entry back on this one, because by the time the market came back in within this particular region right here, at that point in time, I was in class. So I wasn't really on the charts, but if I was back on the charts, I would have possibly ended up jumping in on this one. But I also did a silly mistake on this particular trade, because when the market pulled back in within this region and I had the alert here, unfortunately, I just missed it. And when the market was just about to take off, instead of getting the price somewhere down within this region, I ended up getting it a bit higher, which meant that my stop loss actually ended up being just slightly higher. Had I not made that mistake, I would have possibly survived, because the market literally just came in and just tapped my stop loss, and after that completely went to the upside. So sometimes these things happen. Even we do make mistakes. So don't think that you're the only one who makes mistakes. I mean, even us guys, we make mistakes. I've been on the chart for 15 years and I still make silly mistakes like that. And you end up paying for it. The charts are so unforgiving. You get one chance, you mismanage. After that, the market is gone. And you can see that off this region, the market has completely continued to move to the upside. So it's a bit unfortunate, but anyway, it's okay. Today is another day. We'll see what we can end up getting. So for this one, these are the three areas we will be watching out for. So make sure that you do take note of them. Don't look for buying opportunities right now. That's a horrible idea. So just make sure that you do actually wait for the market to either breach that level to the upside. If it does, then possibly we get something almost similar to this, whereby the market breaks to the upside, comes back in, then we could possibly try and see whether we could get some buying opportunities here. But right now, give the sellers the benefit of doubt. Still could find the market coming back in within this region right here. If it does, then you could possibly try and see whether you could get some buying opportunities there. So also watch out for the region at the bottom. It's a long shot, but like what you say, anything is possible. We've seen these things on the charts for years. So you can't really disregard that level right there. So just make sure that you watch out for it. So that's pretty much it for the USD pairs. So right now we're going to move on to the Euro pairs, and we're going to mix and match them up with the currency pairs on the buy side. So we'll start off with the Euro against the New Zealand dollar. So for this one, earlier in the morning, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities, but it did fall off our watch list during the US session because the fundamentals were telling us that we should have possibly been expecting, some weakness coming in on the euro. Unfortunately, that weakness did not really come through, but you can see that the weakness came through during the London session. So the market pulled back in. And you can see that off this area right here, the market attempted to take off. This was during the London session. In fact, this was more or less like the Asian session weakness. And you can see that during the London session, the market really struggled. Within this region right here, during the US session, it still took off, even if we're expecting some weakness to come in. So this one is back on the buy side, but there are quite a number of fundamentals that are going to be coming out for the euro. So just make sure that you watch out for that. Make sure that you're in the Telegram channel. For the guys who are not there, I think there should be a link that should be there in the chat box. You can be able to join so that in case things do end up shifting, then we'll definitely let you know. So watch out for these three areas. Right now, the market is back in within this region right here. It's not surprising to see that the sellers are reacting off that area there because, look at how the buyers rallied up within this region and the sellers were able to shut them down. Right now, the fact that the buyers are coming in a very slow manner compared to even what they were doing yesterday, it's not really surprising that off this area, the sellers are now really starting to push back. So you could find the market coming back in within this region. So let's wait and see if we could get the market lifting off this area to the upside. You could manage your trade there. And of course, also watch out for this region at the bottom. But of course, in case the buyers do decide to show up, because they can, and let's say the market just bounces off, other levels in between, you could wait and see if the market could break above this region to the upside, and you could actually end up looking for those buying opportunities. So just make sure that you watch out for that. Watch out for the times, like we keep on mentioning, 10, 3, 4, 30. And no matter what you do, make sure that you always do trade with a stop loss and stick within your risk parameters at all times. It doesn't matter how good a setup looks. Always make sure that you have your risk in check. Don't be overconfident. You could easily end up getting sent home. So the next one is the euro against the Great British pound, rather. So for this one, yesterday we were trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. Although this one was a bit tricky yesterday. So in the morning when we're looking at the charts, price was here. I did point out that maybe we got the market breaking above here and we could have possibly looked for the buying opportunities, but also giving this region the benefit of doubt. And you can see that the sellers really pushed down quite hard and even broke this region to the downside. So when that happened, unfortunately, this one fell off our watch list. And also considering the fact that both the euro and the Great British pound pairs, they had switched sides. So ideally, this one ended up being for a sell to some extent during the US session. And you can see that the sales did actually end up working out. But today, we're back to, what we were looking out for yesterday. So watch out for these three areas right here. So right now, we're just holding above this region right here. And we're yet to see. What I would say is possibly wait and see if you can end up getting these sellers of this region right here, possibly attempting to break to the downside. If you get that and you actually get a hold within here, then you could possibly try and see whether you could get your buy. Because generally within here, we still do have some sellers. And you can see that even when you look at that red candle within here, you can see that it's showing that there's some sort of sign of sellers, within this region right here. So that means that let's see how far they can go before the buyers show up. Then after that, you could possibly end up looking for the buy. Because right now, if you look for the buy, you can look for the buy because we're holding above, an area of support. The only problem that you're going to be having is where exactly are you going to be putting your stop loss? You're not so sure because maybe the market could possibly even end up tapping back in within this area. You can see that there was an SNR here that was broken to the upside, and you're not quite sure whether the market could actually pull back in within that region, then come back in for you to actually end up taking the buy. You could easily find that the market could stop you out within this region. So you're not sure whether your stop loss needs to be here or maybe somewhere here, because you never know if the market could come back in within here. So it's possibly better to wait and see what spikes, maybe even pin bars and such kind of things that happen within there. If you can get that, then I think that would be a proper setup. So let's see what happens within this one. And of course, what happens today, quite a number of Euro news events, like I pointed out, that are going to be coming out, but we'll keep you guys updated in case things do end up shifting. So the next one is the euro against the Australian dollar. So for this one, yesterday, we're also trying to see whether we could have gotten buys. You can see the three areas right there that I had pointed out. The market did pull back in within here, and you can see that during the London market open at 10, price was more or less back in within this region. You can see that off there, we got buys, just needed to manage within there. You can see once again, during the US session, it did go to the upside, although it was a bit confusing, considering the fact that we're expecting maybe some weakness on the euro, but that weakness did not really come in. And you can see that the market really moved to the upside quite aggressively, but also possibly something to do with the Australian dollars. It pairs, showing their weakness, because it seems that they're showing a lot of weakness across board. So for this one today, these are the three areas we're going to be watching out for. You can see the sellers are now starting to react. Let's see if they can get the market coming back in within here. If they do, then we can possibly try and see whether we could get our buying opportunities within that area, but also watch out for this region at the bottom right here. Definitely the last area where we will be trying to see whether we can get our last ditch buying opportunities. If the market breaks beneath that region to the downside, then unfortunately there will be no trade for us. So last but not least, for the euro pairs, we have the euro against the Canadian dollar. So for this one yesterday, early in the morning rather, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. The market came back in. Look at the time when the market came back in. So at a time like this yesterday, price was somewhere within here. We couldn't get the market lifting off that area, and the market came down back within this region. And you can see that still during the London market open, the market came to the upside. If you look for buyers, although quite aggressive buyers, they still did end up working. And you can see that during the US session, the market really went to the upside, possibly something to do with the Canadian dollar interest rate news events that came out. You can see that this one really shot to the upside, although we're expecting weakness. There's a bit of caution on this one, but today we're still going to be looking for buying opportunities. So hopefully you can end up taking note of those three regions right there. Let's see what happens. The market is coming back in within a buyer's region, which is good. We just need to see the sellers die out. The way they are coming back in within this region is not really the best. But it's also not quite surprising, because somewhere within this region, you can see that the sellers have pushed the market down aggressively. Same thing within here. The buyers came up aggressively. Look at how the sellers did actually end up shutting them down. So even right now, the market reacting off that region, it's not really surprising. So if you do end up getting the buying opportunity somewhere within here, even if you could be targeting higher up within this area, just make sure that you also possibly watch out for this region. Like if you get the buys here and then the market comes in within this region, possibly starts to hold within there, definitely just make sure that you manage your trade, within that particular region there, even if you could be targeting here or maybe even higher. So just watch out for that. Watch out also for this region at the bottom right here. So still an area where you could possibly find the market calm down until, but remembering that that's the last area. If the market breaks and holds, below that region, then unfortunately there's no trade for us. But if it does end up breaking and comes back into the upside, then that would be good, because a lot of people will definitely be incited. So if they end up being incited and they put their money in the wrong side, we're definitely going to be eating their money today. So that's pretty much it for the euro pairs. So we're going to move on to the yen pairs, which are going to be the last set of currency pairs. So we're going to mix and match them up with everything on the sell side. So we'll start off with the New Zealand dollar against the Japanese yen. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some sells. And you can see the three regions right there that I had pointed out, potential areas for sales and also money management. So in the morning when we're looking at the chart, the market was somewhere within here. So at around 9:10, consider the market just pulled back in within this region here. I mean, if you did attempt sales within there, even if you kept your stops here or somewhere within here, consider those sales did actually end up working out. Definitely did need to possibly manage within this region right here. Consider there was a small pushback, by the buyers who are sitting here. But anyway, the sellers did have a field day. Of course, considering the fact that the New Zealand dollar pairs and the Australian dollar pairs are really moving. So those buyers just couldn't stop the sellers. So moving into today, we're going to be watching out for these three regions right here. So just make sure that you do take note of them. So the conservative, somewhere within this area right here. So don't look for yourselves now, unless the market breaks and holds beneath this region to the downside. But you could find the market also pulling back, maybe somewhere within here. This one is a bit of a long shot, but it's still good to keep that option open. But you also could find that maybe also somewhere within this area. So just make sure that you also watch out for that. Because you could find that similar situation with the Australian dollar, the Swiss franc, and also, I mean, for this one, so you could find that the shallow pullbacks could be happening because the big boys are really, putting their foot on the gas in terms of, pushing the markets down. So just make sure that you watch out in case the pullback doesn't come in deep. There's a possibility price could be coming back in within that region there. So that's pretty much it for that one. For the next one, which is the Great British Pound against the Japanese yen. For this one, also yesterday, we were watching out for sells in the morning, although it had momentarily fallen off our watch list, but you can see that the weakness still did come in. Definitely something also to do with the ends on this one. So in the morning when we're looking at the charts, price was here. So you can see that at around 9:10, price was there. You just needed to be patient for price to possibly come back in within this region or maybe breach this region to the downside. You can see that the market literally came back in within this region 3 times. You just needed to be patient. And I hope that this serves as a good example for why patience is key when it comes to trading. You can imagine all the guys who are looking at the charts coming down all those days and the market is here and they were feeling some sort of FOMO, the fear of missing out, and they jumped in on their sales within here only to get stopped out before the market actually continues moving to the downside. So you can see that the sales off there did actually end up working out. You can see that the market has continued to rally down, especially quite aggressively during the Asian session. It seems like the market picked up a bit of steam. So we will be waiting to see whether we can get some pullbacks coming in. So watch out for these 3 areas right here. So let's see what happens. But also for this one, just like we pointed out on the other one, you could find the shallow pullbacks happening, and you can see the market has literally come back in within that region there, but don't chase. Wait and see if the market can bounce back up. Hopefully somewhere back within here, or maybe somewhere within this region right here, and you could still get some proper selling opportunities within there. Or if the market breaks to the downside of this region, then you could possibly end up waiting to see whether you could get some sells on the pullback. So be a bit patient for this one, but like we always point out, there's a lot of correlation that happens within the yen pair. So if you see something happening on one, make sure that you also have a look at the others. But also there's a lot of correlation that's happening across the board, especially with literally all the pairs that we're looking at. So if you see something on one, make sure that you also do have a look at the others to see what's happening. So for this one, this is the Australian dollar against the Japanese yen. For this one yesterday, we were watching out for sells. You can see the 3 regions right there that I had pointed out. This one didn't quite come back in within the areas like we saw in the New Zealand dollar and the Great British Pound. But you can see that the market was more or less holding within here. So at a time like this yesterday, we didn't need to see the market either come back in there or possibly break to the downside. It didn't break. Although the pullback and the hold, you can see how tiny that was. Unless you're possibly reading that on the smaller time frame, could have been a bit tricky to end up getting. So today, we'll be trying to see whether we can end up getting trades within these 3 areas, and also areas we can manage our trades. So let's keep our fingers crossed and see if we can get something on this one. Could be a bit tricky, but of course, if we do end up getting something, then just make sure that you do end up jumping in on it. So right now, don't look for the sells. Let's see if we can get the market either breaching to the downside or possibly coming back in within there. Could be a minor SNR somewhere within here. You can see some sort of a push of the seller within there. So you could find that maybe even this price somewhere within here could also technically be good enough. Something similar to what happened yesterday. We're expecting price to come in there. It seems like there was a minor SNR somewhere within here that was good enough for the sellers. Although it could have been a bit tricky, considering the fact that you have the support just beneath it. So it would have been a bit tricky in terms of getting a proper risk to reward on it, because you wouldn't really have known if the market would have come down lower. But of course, let's see if we can end up getting some proper trading opportunities on that one today. So last but not least, we do have the Canadian dollar against the Japanese yen. So for this one, yesterday, similar situation. Feels like we've analyzed the same chart. This is the 4th time now. You can see the correlation, exactly the same as what we've seen on the New Zealand dollar, the Great British Pound, and the Australian dollar. Price was somewhere within here. We wanted to see the market come back in within there. Technically, almost did come back in within there, broke to the downside, and you can see that the rampage has continued, moving to the downside. So for this one, watch out for these 3 areas. The story is the same as what we've discussed on the others. So I'm sure by now you do actually have a good idea of what the plan should be looking like on this one. So that's pretty much it for the yen pairs. So we've mixed and matched up all the currency pairs. So right now we're going to move on to the indices and the commodities. So we'll start off with the indices, starting off with the NAS 100. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. Can see the three areas that I had pointed out. And in the morning, I think price was somewhere within this region right here. So we wanted to see either the market come back in within there, or possibly break this region to the downside. If we got a hold, maybe looking for sell. You consider the market broke to the downside. If you look at how it broke, this was quite a strong breach, not a massive breach, and the market and the buyers really struggled within here. Possibly needed to read that on a smaller time frame, and after that, you can see that the market really came down quite aggressively. So for this one for today, we're still going to be watching out for sales, although right now we're within a buyer's region. So that means that you do need to be a bit patient in terms of waiting to see what's going to happen within that area there. You could find that maybe the buyers could react off that region, and you could find the market coming back in, maybe somewhere within there or somewhere within here. You can see that there's also some sort of a minor SNR within this region right here. So just make sure that you watch out for that in case the market comes shy of this region. And you can see that the buyers are really starting to show up, within this area. You can see that the sellers attempted to break to the downside. You can see how the buyers have really now started to come in. You could find that during the London session, price could literally push itself off this region to the upside. Maybe come back in within here, maybe even all the way on the top. Just make sure that you watch out for that. But ideally, the main thing we want to see is the buyers come in, them die out. The sellers now start to come in quite aggressively for us to resume with the market moving to the downside. So just make sure that you watch out for that. But remember that the bias for that one is to go to the downside for as long as we're holding below the red SNR. Of course, you can look for some buying opportunities, but just bear in mind that the buys are definitely counters. So you could find that the sellers could resume at any given point in time without any warning. So the next one is the Dow Jones. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some sales. I clearly see the three regions right there that I had mapped out, and price was somewhere within here. I did point out caution in terms of looking for the sales when the price was here, because you wouldn't have known what was going to happen within this region, and you wouldn't have known whether the buyers would have reacted. And you can see that there was a real fight that was going on. The market broke to the downside and really struggled to move back to the upside, which was not too bad. I mean, if you did end up taking chances within here, maybe stops within there, you can see that the market did actually end up coming down. Although the only problem was that there wasn't a seller who was quite visible up until when this move did actually end up starting to come down to the downside. So for this one, we're still going to be trying to see whether we can get sales, almost something similar to the NAS 100. You can see that even for this one, the buyers are now starting to show up with it here. But it's not surprising considering the fact that we're more or less within their territory. We're within a support region, and I mean, it's common for buyers to show up within such levels. So if they do end up showing up during the London session, you could find that during the London session, the market could be on the pullback phase. And you could find that maybe at around 3-4:30, price could be somewhere back in within here, and you could find the sell that we're trying to see whether we can get working off this region to come down to within here. But it's not guaranteed that price will come in within all the way till there. And that's the reason why counters can be tricky. You could find that maybe even within this minus SNR, and as much as the buyers really look like they're really coming in quite aggressive, you could find that the sellers within here could easily shut them down. And you could find that if the market does end up turning off this area, even if you don't get this sell coming down, because it could be a bit of a tight squeeze, because you're also not too sure what might happen within this region here. But if the sellers do end up reacting, and once the market comes back in within this buyer's region, really struggles to come up, and you can visually see a struggle compared to the previous time. At that point in time, if you jump in on the selling opportunities within that area, more or less that trade, you're definitely going to make money. So just make sure that you do watch out for that. But let's see what does end up happening on this one. Remember, for as long as we're holding below that red SNR, the buyers should be to look for selling opportunities. So moving on into the second last thing, which is silver. For this one, yesterday we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some sales. You can see the three regions right there that I have pointed out. In the morning when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within this region right here. And you can see that the market really struggled within here, but we couldn't quite get seller coming in or a big seller coming in visually. So you can see that the market really struggled within here, but it was up until the US session that the sellers really started to show up. But there was a real fight that was going on within this region before the market really came down tumbling. So for this one, definitely could have been some tricky sells, maybe unless you're reading that on the smaller time frame, but you can definitely see those sells would have really paid off. So for today, these are the three areas that we will be watching out for. So watch out for this region at the top right there. For as long as we're holding below that region to the downside, the bias is still to look for selling opportunities. Right now, the market is within a buyer's region. If you want to look for some counters, you can, but you're not guaranteed that the counter will get all the way to within this region or somewhere within here. You could even find that it might even just get stuck somewhere within here. You can see how those sellers came in, which means that if you're hitting buys, you're literally going against this seller who pushed the market to the downside. And I think there's a high probability and a possibility you don't have as much money as they do. So it's possibly better for you to actually wait. If the buyers can literally struggle, and get maybe even back in within this region right here. Maybe if you do end up looking for the sells, you could find that those sales might work out faster than the buys. You could take the buy. Yeah, the buy could work, but you could find that it could be agonizing to wait because the market could really struggle to move to the upside. Whereby if you are to take the sell, you'll find that the sell will even work out quite fast because you're in line with where the big boys actually want to take the market. So just watch out for those more or less like 4 areas. This one is just an area where you can watch out for, but of course, these are the main areas that you need to watch out for. So last but not least, we do have gold. Now for gold yesterday, it was a bit of a tricky situation. You can see that we were trying to see whether we could have gotten the buys, and the buys did work, but the sellers really came down quite hard. We'll go to up to the higher time frame to see what really happened. So yesterday in the morning, when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within this region right here. And you can see that I had illustrated that maybe if the market broke to the upside, pulled back in and held, we could have looked for the buys. The sellers did react off that region to come down. Didn't quite come down all the way till within this region here. But you can see that there was this scenario somewhere within here where the market held, broke to the upside. And you can see that unless you're reading it on a smaller time frame, the market was looking like it was starting to move to the upside. But the sellers came out of nowhere. Unfortunately, there wasn't a proper hold, especially on the 15-minute time frame. Unless you're looking at it on the smaller time frame, but on the 15-minute time frame, there was really no hold within here because when the market came back in here, there was no sign right there. Definitely, the buyers within here couldn't contain how the sellers came in, and of course, the market breached to the downside. And you can see that today we're back in a seller's zone. So for this one, just going up to the higher time frame, the seller who we wanted to challenge was this seller right here. You can see this was some sort of an SNR. Based on how the buyers were coming up, we're quite optimistic that maybe we're going to breach to the upside. But unfortunately, you can see that the sellers really shut down those buyers, like nobody's business. So for this one for today, we're going to be trying to see whether we can get sells. Let's see what happens. If the market can give us some proper pullbacks to come in, then we could possibly try and see whether we could get some selling opportunities. So do watch out for those 3 areas right there. Possibly something also to do with the USD strength that's coming in, possibly also showing on gold to some extent. So just make sure that you watch out for those 3 areas right there. Don't look for yourselves now. In as much as the sellers come down quite aggressively and the buyers look like they're really struggling with it here, but still give them the benefit of doubt. Let's see what they can end up doing. Unless the market breaks to the downside of this region and holds below it, then at that point in time, then that's when we'll possibly try and see whether we can resume with the sales. But you could find that during the London session, the market could easily pull back in this region right here. But also watch out for minor SNRs. Considering the fact that the seller has come down quite aggressively, you can see that the market is starting to range within here. You could potentially find that the market might even just come back in within this region before this seller attempts to break this previous record. Their previous record right now is somewhere within here. They will possibly have a second attempt at it before maybe the market turns around. So just make sure that you watch out for that. But remember, gold, silver, the Dow Jones and the NASDAQ 100, basically we're more or less fully technical of them. So for as long as price is holding below the red SNRs, we look for sales. If it's holding above, then we look for buying opportunity. So just make sure that you also do have that in mind. So I guess that's pretty much it for everything. For the guys who may be joining us a bit late, then feel free to have a look at the watch list. That is exactly what we're going to be watching out for today. So let me see if there's anything on the Q&A. So I'm not really seeing anything. Say that one of two things. Everything is perfectly clear or nothing made sense. But I know that you guys are smart, so I think everything made sense. I just see Alan Rono there with your usual vote of thanks. Karibu sana, Alan. Always happy to see you here. So I guess that's pretty much it then from me and from us. Hopefully you guys have gained much value out of this. Make sure that you do kill it on the charts. If you do get some good opportunities, make sure that you also do send us in some screenshots. We'd also be happy to celebrate your wins. And of course, if you're struggling in terms of trading, also feel free to send in your screenshots to us. and we'll see how best we can end up helping you, but just by giving you free advice. We definitely want everyone to end up improving, and that's the reason why we're doing this. Like I pointed out yesterday, we do this with a lot of love and out of, the bottom of our hearts, just really wanting to see people improve. We struggled a lot, when we came into trading. If we had sessions like this being pointed in the right direction, I think we'd be way farther than where we are today. So we didn't really want people to go through, a lot of nonsense that we went through, in our formative years. And that's the reason why we do what we do. So it's for the good of the industry. And that's why we do it. So I guess we'll see you guys tomorrow. Remember, if you want to get more information about our courses and stuff, you still can do that. I think there's a lot of links that have been put on our chat box, but you also can end up visiting our website or also contacting us. We'll definitely talk to you and see how best we can end up helping you. So with that, happy trading, guys, and bye for now. May the peeps reach you.